この本では PK 戦はくじではないということが非常に書かれています。
There are so many things that you can control. The technique that you use, the way that you train to get better at this particular kick, that is something that you can control.
審判が笛を吹いてから間を取ってから蹴った方がいいことを紹介していて、
So Yasuhito Endo, suddenly he took 6.4 seconds, which is a lot more than 1 second that most players took. I've done research that shows that the more intensely and the more big you celebrate that goal, the higher the chance is that you will end up on the winning team in that penalty shootout. Just to spray positive emotions into your team seem to have a contagious effect.
もし勝ち上がりたかったら PK 戦の準備は必ずしないといけないんですけども、日本代表へのアドバイスをお願いします。こんにちは、スポーツライターの木崎伸也です。今日はスペシャルゲストに来ていただきました。まず本の紹介をしたいんですが、このPK の本が日本で発売されたんですけども、本のタイトルは、なぜ超一流選手が PK を外すのか。スポーツ心理学者のゲール・ヨルデットさんが PK を研究して出した本です。で、先日森保監督にもあったんですけど、やはりこの内容をチェックしていて、一部選手にもすでに内容を共有しているとのことでした。じゃあ今日は PK の秘密、どうやったら PK で勝てるかっていうのをお聞かせください。まず最初にヨルデットさんに聞きたいんですけども、PK 戦はくじではないと。PK 戦はよく日本でももうロシアンルーレットみたいだとか、運が左右するって言うんですけども、この本では PK 戦はくじではないってことが非常に書かれています。まずここについて教えてください。
Yes, of course. It's a very normal claim that I hear often that the penalty shootout is a lottery because people feel like there's so much chance involved. They feel like there's nothing they can do to really control the outcome. You cannot fully train the pressure that comes with a penalty shootout. I've done research on this for many years, and I think the biggest observation that I have around this is that there are so many things that you can control. There are so many things that you can do. Can you control it 100%? No. Can you simulate in training the pressure of an important penalty shootout in the World Cup? No, you cannot. But that does not mean that you cannot do anything. So for example, you can do something about the skill involved, the technique that you use, the way that you train to get better at this particular kick. That is something that you can control. You can control the mental approach that you have to keep composed, to keep focused, that you do certain things that make you more confident in this situation, that make you more focused in this situation, the type of routine that you have, what you do leading up to a shot, that is something that you can control. You can prepare, of course, and analyze the opponents. You can analyze the goalkeepers you're up against. The goalkeepers can analyze the penalty takers that they're up against. That is another thing that you can control. You can also control to some extent what's happening in the shootout between the players, between the penalty taker and the goalkeeper. The goalkeepers can do so many things to try to disturb, distract, and play with the mind of the penalty taker. And the penalty takers can also try to play with the goalkeeper in the way that they put the ball down and with respect to how they wait after the referee's whistle. Maybe the teammate goalkeeper can do something to help create a 2 versus 1 situation in the penalty box. You can control how you what you do after the kick, between the kicks. You can control what happens in the mid-circle. The coaches can do a lot to control what's happening before the penalty shootout, to communicate with the team in a proper way. And you can train. We have a lot of research now on what we call pressure training. And that suggests that you don't have to simulate something 100% for it to have effect. Of course, in a penalty shootout, everyone feels anxiety. And if you can simulate some of that anxiety, if you can put some pressure in training, for example, by having a reward, the winning team in training, they will get some kind of reward, or the losing team, they will have to, I don't know, clean the fitting room, or they will have to clean the boots of the winning team, or they will have to serve tea to the winning team. So a small little thing that hurts a little bit, if you do that in training, you will get a little bit more anxiety, and that little bit of anxiety will make that training a lot more effective than if you don't do it. So to try to simulate these things in training, for example, by having a mid-circle that you walk from, you have a referee, and you have something on the line, it counts. That will make this training so much more effective, and that is something that you can do to control this.
まさにこの本で小さなストレスを与えると大きなストレスにも耐えられる、そのシミュレーションできるっていう話が書いてあって、そこに消防士とかパイロットとか外科医の話が出てきて非常に面白かったんですけども、そうやって小さなストレスを訓練することで本番へのストレスが耐性が増すっていうことがあるんでしょうか？
Yes. So if you look at other industries outside of football, it's not, of course, just football and just penalty shootouts where people experience stress and pressure. It's absurd to think that football is so unique and different than all these other industries, because if you're a doctor working at an emergency room in a hospital, if you're a surgeon performing very delicate, I don't know, heart operations or brain operations, if you make mistakes, people's lives will be lost. So the pressure that these people are under is immense. They know that if they make a mistake now, they will have to go out to the families of someone who was on their table and explain to them that this did not work. We lost your son or father or uncle or whatever that is. The pressure is huge. That's another industry. If you look at, for example, pilots, it's the same thing there. If a pilot on a plane with 200 people, 250 people make a mistake, the pilot will lose his life. Everyone on board of that plane will lose their lives. If you go to the military, same thing there. If you make a mistake in an armed battle, a conflict, you might lose your lives, and all your friends will lose their lives. All these industries feel so much pressure. But if you ask them what they do when they don't perform, if you ask people in the military, so fortunately, most of the time, they're not in armed conflicts. They don't have to perform for real. But what do they do then all year when there's no performance situation? Do they just sit around and do other things, or do they train? Of course they train. They train, and because they know that to simulate these high pressure moments will help them when they actually get there. They know that if they can create friction, disruptions, and pressure in their everyday training, it will actually be easier when they are forced to perform when it really matters. And only in football do we think that, well, you cannot train these moments, so we'd rather do other things. It's just absurd, and it's one example how we, in football, even though I love football, I'm from football, I will spend my whole life in football, but we are very, very old school and very traditional and very conventionally thinking. And for 50 years, that has stopped us in penalty shootouts because we have not prepared our players as well as we could.
あなたはこの本の中でさらに面白い例として、カナダ代表の例を紹介してました。東京オリンピックで、カナダの女子代表が決勝まで進んで PK 戦の末に優勝したんですけども、その決勝までにその準備期間を含めて4回も PK 戦のリハーサルをしていたと。PK 戦のリハーサル4回もしていたということで、やはりそのリハーサルがこのカナダの優勝につながったんでしょうか？
Yeah, so the Canada Olympic team, they obviously became world champions after several penalty kicks and several penalty shootouts. And one would look at this team and maybe think, okay, so they got a little lucky. They were a team that probably wasn't the best team in the Olympics with respect to what they did on the pitch within regular time. But they were able to fight their games, 2 penalties, and then they won those penalty shootouts, also in the final against Sweden. But if you look a little bit behind the scenes with the Canada team, they had what they called a penalty protocol, a penalty document, a plan, a routine set in place that they had practiced for almost 8 years. So for 8 years, they have been preparing. If we get into a tournament penalty shootout, we will be ready. So they had plans for everything that was going on. They had a plan for communication. They had a plan for individual routines, how each player would approach the ball to make sure that she had as good of a mental, psychological makeup as possible. And they trained. They always trained and simulated everything that would go into a penalty shootout. So when they came to the Olympics and they got their penalty kicks, their players were very disciplined. They stuck to their plan. They did what they were supposed to. Now, that doesn't guarantee that you will score on every kick. It doesn't guarantee that you will win every penalty shootout. But it raises the probability. This is a game of probabilities. And by preparing and training like the Canada team did, you will increase the chance that you will end up winning. And they have an Olympic gold medal to prove it.
で、そのまさにテクニックも教えてほしいんですけども、本の中でいろんな PK 戦の PK の蹴り方とかテクニックが紹介されていて、最も個人的に面白いなと思ったのは、キッカーはホイッスルが鳴ってから4秒待ってからアクションを起こして走って蹴るべきだと。要するに結構、審判が笛を吹いてから、間を取ってから蹴った方がいいってことを紹介していて、その例として遠藤康人選手の例とかもあったんですけども、この技術について教えてください。
Yes. So typically when you're in a stressful situation that where you have a lot of anxiety, and you control the time, you control how much time you spend in this situation. I think humans have this born tendency that we want to limit the time. We want to keep that period as short as possible because it hurts. It hurts to stand there, to be there. If you go to a dentist's office, I don't know exactly how it is in Japan, but I know for me in Norway, being at the dentist is not always the most pleasant thing you can do. So you want to limit the time that you spend in the dentist chair as much as you can. So if you look historically at penalty shootouts, it's the same there, that players, when they're having to take important penalty kicks, if the referee gives them the signal that you can now shoot the ball, most players will just rush towards the ball like this is a 100-meter sprint, and the goal is to finish this as soon as possible. So if you look at in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, and the first decade of 2000s, the average time that players took was less than 1 second after the referee had blown their whistle before they started to run towards the ball. Then you had some players around 2006, 8, 10, 12 who started taking more time. And what's funny, and I make a point out of this in the book, is that a Japanese player was one of the pioneers of this. So Yasuhito Endo, in the World Cup in 2010, he took the first penalty kick for Japan against Paraguay. Suddenly he took 6.4 seconds. 6.4 seconds, which is a lot more than 1 second that most players took. And when you looked at how he did it, and I'm sure many have seen this kick, he looks like he's meditating when he's standing there waiting for the ball. The camera zooms in on his face and it's so quiet. I bet he has like a resting heart rate when he stands there in a situation where most people would feel all the pressure going through their bodies. So the point about taking time, and of course I spoke with Endo for my book. I had a chance to do an interview with him. So he would talk about a few things about this. He would talk about how taking time in the situation has a benefit with respect to the duel against the goalkeeper, because you become unpredictable. If all the goalkeepers expect you to instantly rush towards the ball and you take a little bit more time, the goalkeeper doesn't know when you start. So it gives you a little bit of an edge in that situation. But also, it gives you a chance to take a breath or two or three and get a little bit more control over the situation and make sure that what you're doing is deliberate and composed and focused and not erratic, volatile, panic driven, as is so often the case. So taking the time, like almost a little pause, a little break, like a little moment of meditation before you take the kick, can have performance benefits. And I think that's something that players should try to do. Now, it's important, of course, that you're not just taking time to take time. Now, if people now run around and they hear, like the coaches are telling players, you have to take time, you have to take time. And then players will, look at their watch and like, okay, I need to take 5 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then it kind of loses its effect. It's about taking time to get control over yourself and the situation. And this is something that football players should do, but I think also people should do in general. Before you're making an important decision, before you're making an important argument in a meeting, right before you're stepping onto the stage to do something, take some time, take a breath, just a moment to collect yourself, and you're ready to go. It makes sense. And you can actually now also look at football players in penalty kicks that are taking more and more time. It started with Endo and a few other pioneers. But if you look at the Premier League now, for example, the average time that players take before penalty kicks in the Premier League is above 4 seconds. So players are taking more and more time in these situations because this is a way to be better prepared for that performance that you're about to take.
で、その遠藤さんにコンタクトを取ってインタビューした時っていうのはどんな反応でしたか？
I don't think he was surprised, but I think it was something that he enjoyed talking about because obviously he was an amazing player with a fantastic career, long career, very admirable for someone to play for that long. So he's a role model for I think everyone, not just football players, but people, that you can be so at this high level for so long. But I think he enjoyed talking about penalty kicks also because he was a specialist. He was someone who did this well. So when I talked about how you're taking so long time, he would say that, I've taken longer for other shots, and he would speak about his technique and how he would effectively get the ball into the goal. So this to me was a meeting with a true professional, a fantastic athlete, but also a penalty kick specialist. Which is, I think, a key to handling the situation. It's something that you can build as a craft, as an art, and have pride in that part of your game. And Endo certainly had that.
で、他のテクニックについても教えてほしいんですけども、ゴールキーパーがキッカーにボールを渡す。それも味方のキッカーに渡すだけじゃなくて、敵のキッカーにもボールを渡す。これはイングランド代表が、試していたプラン、それ実行したプランだというふうに書かれていますけども、これについても教えてください。
Yes. So I did my good friend Chris Markham, who worked with the FA. He was the person in charge of the English football penalty kick revival or revolution, if you want. Of course, the English football team, they lost, I think, 6 out of 7 important penalty kicks all through the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s. So finally, someone understood that we need to do something here because we cannot lose in all these tournaments on penalty kicks. So they started a big penalty project in 2017, 2018. to prepare for the Russia World Cup in 2018. Markham was heading up that project, and he started reading all the research. He spoke to researchers, including me, and to set up a big plan for what they were trying to do. So they worked for more than 6 months only on penalties, him and 3 other people, to devise this plan, this routine, and this structure for how to do this. And one of the things they did was to invent this routine for how a penalty taker in a shootout can start his kick protocol, and that is that you get the ball from your own goalkeeper. So when your own goalkeeper has been in action, either there's a goal or the goalkeeper saves the ball, that goalkeeper will take the ball and walk over to his own teammate, the next penalty taker in the penalty shootout, and give the ball to that penalty taker. And the point with that is just to have a structure for how you start your kick. It's much better to get the ball from a friend, one of your teammates, than the opposition goalkeeper, for example, having the ball, which we see sometimes that the opposition goalkeeper will, not give you the ball in a friendly way. The ball can be tossed away or kicked into your stomach or something. So it's a friendly way to start, and that also gives the goalkeeper a chance to maybe say a word or 3 of support, something that can instill some confidence, something that can take down the threat level a little bit. Just introducing that element in this very stressful situation is one thing that you can control. We spoke about things you can control, and here's another thing that you can control. That, of course, will not in itself guarantee any success, but it will be just one other thing that will make it a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more structured, and help you as a penalty taker keep your focus in this very important situation.
このイングランド代表は実際ロシアワールドカップでこれをやってコロンビア代表の PK 戦に勝った一つの要因だったんでしょうか？
Yes, he did the procedure. They won against Colombia. Fantastic penalty shootout, an amazing moment for England. Then Chris Markham left the FA, and I think that they stopped this type of penalty project, and then they lost in the European Championships at home against Italy on a penalty shootout in 2021. And in my book, I'm criticizing them for a lot of the things that they did in that penalty shootout. And then they won again in the penalty shootout in the European Championships last year against Switzerland, where they did a whole lot of new things again. And England has now become probably the best country in the world when it comes to penalty kicks, because they have a lot of resources at the English Football Association, and they put more and more focus on this, at least under Gareth Southgate, and no one has had a better structure around penalty kicks than what England has, and that's just another example how you can control what is going into this to a large extent if you're able to put resources and focus and time and training into this.
で、次もう一つ、スキルというか、これはカルチャーというか、みんなの態度に関係することだと思うんですけども、もし誰かがキックをミスしたら、みんなで出迎えようと。それを、オランダの U21 代表の時にやって非常に効果があったということを書かれてますけども、こういうことが心理的安全性とかも与えるかなと思うんですが、これについても教えてください。
So another thing that you can control in a penalty shootout is the reaction that you have as a team to what happens on the preceding shot. So, for example, when you score a goal, we have research. I've done research that shows that the more intensely and the more big you celebrate that goal, the higher the chance is that you will end up on the winning team in that penalty shootout. Just to spray positive emotions into your team seem to have a contagious effect. That's our theory around this. But the other thing is, what if you miss? Now, if you missing a shot in a penalty kick shootout is something that, of course, football players don't want to talk about. That's what they dread and fear the most. And I've always been thinking that this is a moment that it's important to show the team that we are together. It's important to show the other penalty takers that may come into a shootout that even if you are to miss when you take your next shot, we as a team will be there for you, with you. You are still part of this group. And that means that when one of your teammates miss, this is, of course, it's bad. You can't take that back. You missed. But it's also a chance to do something. It's a chance to turn things around. It's a chance to recover. It's a chance to show everyone that we haven't lost. And in fact, more than half of the penalty shootouts are won by a team that has missed once or more. So this means that even if you miss once, it's still a pretty good chance that you're able to come out winning if you recover well. So I started doing this long time ago now. Back in 2007, I worked with the Dutch national teams, the first teams, Olympic team, and the under 21 teams. So I started speaking about this back then, and I still remember so well the first time I told the players this, that we need to have a plan for when you miss penalty kicks, I said, and they were like stiffen up because they don't want to talk about that. But that's exactly why you should talk about it. You should talk about it so that you can get this also under control. When one of our players miss, we will take the whole group from the mid-circle over to that player as soon as we can to get that player back into the group again, because this is how we behave as a team. And I think this is a lesson which transcends football and penalty kicks. It's about much more than that. That when, for example, in your business, if someone messes up, if someone makes a big mistake, if someone has done something that is not good, the quality of the culture in that business, I think, is about how do we as a group recover? How do we as a group support that person who needs our help the most? And that's something that people can always think about. Who now is struggling? Who now has done something that makes him or her feel not so good? Well, that's the person that we should support and back up. So this is just, I guess, just humanism, just being there for each other, which makes perfect sense on and off the football pitch.
で、まさに今、ミスの話をみんなが嫌がるっていうことを話されましたけども、そのポジティブシンキングっていうのは僕も大事かなと思ってたんですけども、この本で出てきて面白かったのが、ポジティブシンキングだけでは限界があって、やっぱネガティブなことにどうやってエラーに対して準備するかが非常に大事だっていう話が書かれてたんで、それについても教えてください。
I think it's important with these high pressure situations that you're very realistic, and that you conduct an analysis of what will happen or what is likely to happen, even if those things that are likely to happen are uncomfortable and difficult to think about because they trigger anxiety in you. You still need to prepare for what most likely will happen. So this making mistakes, missing a penalty kick, it's likely that even if you do everything right, you might miss a penalty kick, and this is something that a philosophy that really grew in so-called high reliability organizations. So this would be the flight industry. This would be emergency rooms in hospitals. This will be aircraft carriers, where if you make mistakes, you will not just lose a point or a game, but you will lose people's lives and equipment worth millions, if not billions of dollars. These organizations learned over the past 40, 50 years that human error is not just possible, but it's likely. People are people and they will make mistakes. So it's important that we have a prepared way to deal with that mistake, prepared a way to cope with that mistake. And this is not negative thinking. This is realistic thinking. It's constructive, productive thinking. And I think that also goes with penalty shootouts. And another part of that is that if you think that you're going to go into a World Cup penalty shootout for your country and you're not going to be nervous, you're wrong. You are going to be nervous. You're going to feel anxiety. You're going to feel tension. You're going to have fear. All these things are extremely natural in this situation. I spoke with, for the book, my countryman, the Norwegian striker Erling Haaland, who plays for Manchester City and Norway. And in my interview with him, he said that it's very misunderstood by so many that they think that they're not going to be nervous when they take penalty kicks. He said, when I take penalty kicks, I am, and these were his words, shit nervous, so nervous. And my point is that you're going to be nervous, expect to be nervous. And then the question is not, am I nervous or not? The question is, what do I do with my nerves and my anxiety when I'm there? And I have another example in the book where I speak about Zinedine Zidane, one of the top players back in the 90s, who took an incredibly important penalty kick in the 2004 European Championships for France against England, where he threw up right before he took the penalty kick. That's how nervous he was. So he threw up, wiped his mouth, and then he ran over to the ball and he scored a beautiful penalty kick. Because the question isn't, are you nervous or not? The question is, how do you feel? Because clearly he felt bad. But the question is, can you just focus on your task, even though you are nervous, you have anxiety, and you feel really bad? That's where your focus should be. And are there things that you can do and prepare in training and rehearse beforehand that will help you deal with and cope with this tension and these fears? That's where your focus should be.
本の中ではジョコビッチの例も出てくるんですけど、ジョコビッチもそうやって不安があるけども、不安をすぐ切り替えられるのが自分の特技だっていうことを書かれてたんですけども、ジョコビッチについてはどうお考えですか？
Yeah, so Djokovic, the top tennis player, is often asked about his incredible mental strength. How can you be so strong mentally? Clearly, this is something that you were just born with. And he will stop people. No. I was not born with this. My mental strength is a result of so much intense practice. I've been working on myself and my mental strength. This is something that I've built over years. And then he lists things that he has done. And one of the things that Djokovic spends a lot of time doing and always has is mindfulness meditation, where he works with meditation, where you're staying present in the moment, focusing maybe on your breath, focusing on a point in your body. You feel different things going through your body. You may feel pain. You may feel discomfort. You may feel impatience. You start to think about other things. And your job throughout that meditation is to take your focus back into that breath or that point of focus, and just let those other things fly away. And this is one very specific technique that we see now more and more elite athletes are doing. And I think this is something that we, general people and employees and managers can also learn from, that all these big mental strengths that we see top footballers and top athletes have, it's taught, it's trainable, it's something you can rehearse. It just requires that you spend time building it, rehearsing it, working on it, and you can become your own type of Djokovic in your life and in your roles.
で、そうやってメンタルは鍛えられて PK に応用できるということなんですけども、最後のテーマとして日本代表へのアドバイスをお聞きしたいんですが、本の中にも出てくるんですけども、ワールドカップの決勝トーナメントでは20%、5試合に1試合 PK になってると、PK 戦になってると。なので、もし勝ち上がりたかったら PK 戦の準備は必ずしなきゃいけないんですけども、日本代表へのアドバイスをお願いします。
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, I want to say that's a big honor that Moriyasu read the book and did something with the book. I had no idea, so that gives me goosebumps on my arms. That's very, very good to hear. And I also want to say, and extending that of course I've studied him and the Japanese team in the 2022 World Cup, and I admire him so much. I admire him so much for what happened in that penalty shootout and what happened after the penalty shootout. And I want to say a little bit about that first, if I may, and then I can try to give some advice. Of course, the penalty shootout was not it was not a good moment for Japan. And before I say anything else about that, I need to also say, I mean, I'm from Norway, and I just wish that there will be one day when my team, the Norway team, is in a situation where we can lose penalty shootouts. But we are never in the World Cup. We have not been in the World Cup since 1998. So yeah, if I could be in a position like Japan where we are in a penalty shootout, even if we lose, I will be a happy man. So with that said, it was not a good shootout, of course, for the Japanese team. And I look at these players, and they're not. This is not only a Japanese phenomenon. This is something I see in so many other players and teams who have not really prepared as much as they could. I see several of these players, in fact, all the players who did not score in that shootout, they did not strike me back then as that they had prepared, that they were specialists at this. It looked like they were not comfortable in this situation. They looked like they did not have a clear plan. One exception, and that is Asano. He was very different than the others because he put the ball down on the penalty mark, and you could tell already then, because he was very meticulous and careful and thorough in the way that he put his ball down. Then he took 5 big deliberate steps back and then 1 step to the side. So you could tell, it's very easy to see that this is someone who has a structure, a system, and a plan for how I am doing this penalty kick. The other 3 were more rushed. They were more, you could tell they're standing a little bit like this. They're not fully. It's not a structured pre-shot routine, so it's very different. And then about Moriyasu, and I make a point out of this in the book, that he did, leading up to this penalty shootout, something that many of the teams did in the World Cup, and also other teams have always done, and that is that you get to a penalty shootout and you don't know exactly what players will take a shot, possibly because you haven't prepared this that much. So you do the approach where you ask the players who wants to take a shot. But that's not the right question to ask, because as a player, if you're then putting your hand up, I'll take a shot, then suddenly the responsibility is now even higher on that player. The pressure is even higher because now the player has said, I will do it, and and that will put more weight on that player's shoulders, and it will create a difficult situation because that's not always the case that players will volunteer. They will, which also happened in the Japanese team. None of the players instantly put their hands up because they're all afraid, of course. So then you get a little bit of a difficult situation where you don't know what to do as a coach, and the players see the other players being nervous, and that kind of rubs off on them. So it creates a difficult situation. This happened in the Japanese team, but it also happened in most of the teams in the World Cup. Now, where I admire Moriyasu is that, first of all, he said this, and I quoted him in the book. He said after the World Cup that if I get to do this again, I would do it differently. I will not ask the players who wants to take a shot. I will make a decision. I and my coaching staff will make the decision. And I love that. I love that he's reflecting on this, that he's learning on this. This goes back to, we'll all make mistakes here. And with penalty shootouts, most teams in football make mistakes, but it's about how do you learn from it? How do you recover from it? And how do you improve from it? So that I love. But then also, and I was preparing for this interview, I was watching my old videos back this morning because I got access for the Qatar World Cup to a very unique set of videos where you can see really behind the scenes what is happening, not just the TV broadcast, but all the other cameras around the World Cup games. So I looked at what happened after the Japan-Croatia penalty shootout. And I saw Moriyasu being such a humble, courageous, vulnerable, modern leader. The way that he took care of his team, the way that he walked over to all the members of his team after that penalty shootout loss to comfort them, to show them that he was there for them, the respect that he showed, the grace that he showed when the whole team was walking around the stadium to show respect for the fans, to bow to the fans. I mean, it's a moment of shame, of course, and this is why the penalty shootout is so big, because when you lose, you have to stand there in that shame, and I suspect that people from East Asian cultures maybe feel more of these things than others. It's a bigger part of your culture than it is in certain Western cultures. But the way you show it, it's just so beautiful to watch. And I have so much admiration for the humility and the humanity that the Japanese team and Moriyasu in particular showed in that situation. So that was a long introduction. Now, what can you do? Or what is my advice going forward? I think it's a very good start to read this book, to see the knowledge that we have on this, all the insights that are on this, to think about how can you control this shootout that we spoke about? How can the penalty takers prepare? How can they build individualized routines? How can you have collective structures, ways that we communicate with each other in this event? How can the coaching staff communicate as optimally as possible, prepare as optimally as possible? How do we train this? How can we design pressure training that I saw Japan qualified for the World Cup already, so you know that you're going to be in the World Cup. And then you should start to prepare for this now. You should start to have trainings with this now. Again, you cannot simulate it 100%, but you can simulate it maybe 30%. And that will make you more prepared when you're in this situation. So I will do all of that. But then also I would take some inspiration from the past, because if you look at history, yes, the Japanese team lost the 2010 World Cup penalty shootout against Paraguay. But if you look at the penalty kicks in that shootout, you had some amazing performances. You had Endo that I spoke about, who was a pioneer when it comes to penalty kicks. After Endo came Hasebe, who took one of the best penalty kicks in that World Cup. He stuck it into the top left corner. Then, of course, there was one player who missed, but then came Honda at the end, who executed the most beautiful, what I call goalkeeper-dependent kick. It was perfectly executed, very cool. He looked at the goalkeeper, go to one side, and then he just calmly rolled it to the other side, which was fantastically well done. So the Japanese men's team in the World Cup has some people in the past to be inspired by. I mean, the Japanese players, when I see this, are inherently really strong under pressure. So it doesn't take that much to be a little bit more clever, a little bit smarter, and then they can do this well. And now I'm forgetting the Japanese women's team, of course, who won the World Cup final on penalties back in 2011. Also an amazing performance. So the 2022 World Cup didn't go as well as you could, but Moriyasu is showing willingness and ability to learn from that in an admirable way. And the Japanese players and teams have histories that can inspire them even more. So I see no reason why the Japanese team shouldn't be one of the best teams in the world at penalty shootouts. And that job starts here today.
いや、すごい日本のその良さも見えてきて、次のワールドカップに向けてすごい希望が持てました。で、最後にこの本の読者に向けてメッセージをお願いします。
This book is I think, perfect for those who are, of course, interested in football, follow the Japanese team. They will see a lot in this book that will, that probably will both entertain and that will educate about what's happening at top level football today with respect to all those micro details, microstructures, little behaviors that will probably open their eyes to what's happening on the football pitch when it comes to penalty kicks and penalty shootouts, which has become such an important part of the game now. This will give a very, very updated view on exactly what's going on right now, and it will change your view on what's happening on the pitch. But I also want to say, and I can say this quite confidently because I'm spending a lot of time really traveling around the world, giving lectures to business organizations, to people who are not in football, about what we can learn from football about pressure and pressure training and coping with pressure in our own lives and in our own work. And what I found then is that the people who are coming up to me after my presentations, my lectures, so many of them, they will say, I'm not actually a football fan. I don't even like football. And when I heard that you were going to come here and give a lecture for us, I was thinking, oh no, more football. But they tell me that, but I love this because this is not really about football. And it's not. This is about people performing under pressure and stress. So basically, to your viewers, if you have stress in your life, if you feel pressure in important situations, privately or at work, I know that this book can help you understand yourself better, understand these situations better, and help you do things, little techniques, little new approaches, mindsets, and also prepare and train that will help you get the most out of yourselves in those moments in your life that matters the most for you. Even if you don't like football, I think this book can be a good read for you.
いや、確かに本当サッカー以外の人たちにも面白い内容だと思うので、ぜひ手に取ってみてください。今日はヨルデットさんありがとうございました。
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was a very good conversation for me, and I'm really very excited to hear what you said about Moriyasu. I hope I got that across. I really admire him and what he has done and how he has handled these situations. So that was a big honor to hear.